So, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the August book lunch. I'm Ally Machate. I'll be your host today. And excuse me, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, just a little bit about me. I am an editor, writer, and publishing consultant. I'm the owner of Ambitious Enterprises, where I lead a team of publishing industry professionals in working with folks probably just like you. We're on a mission. We want to help bring more high-quality books to the world's readers, including us. We love to read. Many of us are writers. Some of us are published writers. And we want to share the experience that we have, as I like to say, from both sides of the desk, both as experienced editors working for publishing companies and also as writers trying to get published and promote our work. With those of you out there who may not have access to people where you can just ask questions, get reliable answers, get information that you can count on. And, you know, we do all of this by assisting, guiding, and supporting with the authors on their publishing journey in a variety of ways. So welcome to the monthly book lunch. This is just one of the ways that I've been experimenting with to try to reach out to people and provide that kind of assistance. And this happens every month on the last Wednesday on the month at 12:30. Sometimes you'll just be looking at my smiling face, asking questions in an open Q&A session, like we had last month. But this month, I'm very pleased to welcome a special guest. I hope you'll join me in welcoming poet, novelist, memoirist, Writers Workshop coordinator extraordinaire, Jane Elkin. Jane is the author of a poetry collection, a highly acclaimed poetry collection called World Class. It's inspired by the ESL Classroom, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. She's also the founder of the Broadneck Writers Workshop. Her work has appeared in a number of places, including some literary journals you might have heard of, including the Kansas City Voices, Kestrel, and Steam Ticket. So Jane, thank you very much for calling in, and we're really happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Excellent. So why don't we just dive right in. Everybody, just to let you know, your screen is not malfunctioning. Jane is calling in by phone, so if you only see me on your screen, you're good. Jane, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. Well, I do a variety of creative writing pursuits, but I am primarily dedicated to poetry. I am also a teacher of English as a second language for Anne Arundel Community College. And my students are very inspiring people. They've done a lot of memorable things, said a lot of memorable sayings, and they inspired this collection of poems, narrative poems in accentual verse, called World Class, Poems Inspired by the ESL Classroom. As you said, I am the facilitator and the founder of the Broadneck Writers Workshop, most of whom are not poets, and I started that 6 years ago.
So obviously, I think maybe it's fair to say that you're primarily a poet, but I know that you've also published, or at least that you're also writing other types of work. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit today about some of the special challenges that poets have. You know, getting poetry published can be a little bit of a different animal than trying to publish a short story or an essay or even a novel, for example. So
well,
tell us a little bit about poetry published.
Yeah, I actually find it's easier to get published as a poet than it is as a prose writer. I keep very detailed records of how many submissions I send out, and of the 23 fiction pieces I have in circulation, I've published 10 of them, and it frequently takes me like up to 20 hits before I've found a home for my work. Memoir, even less of a track record, but I've published 23 poems out of 113, and very, very often they find a home within the first 4 or 5 tries. So I don't know if I'm a better poet than I am a prose writer, or if there's just more opportunities out there.
Because I think that a lot of people would say that they feel like it's harder to get poetry published. It definitely seems like the world in general, that's sort of the going through. Nobody reads poetry. Nobody buys poetry.
Well, that's true. Only other poets read poetry. But there are a lot of journals out there that publish poetry as well as prose, and very often I'll find a home for a piece specifically because the issue has a particular theme.
That's a really excellent thing, and it makes me wonder, just sort of as a related issue with that, sometimes I wonder if people put a higher value on having control in a situation where perhaps they shouldn't, maybe because they just don't have the expertise or they don't have the knowledge. When you were more involved with students, did you feel like there was enough supervision from the faculty, or did you feel like there was enough professional input?
I think there was. I think Dr. Addix was very involved with that student, but because we were working with poetry and she wasn't a poet, there were certain aspects of how the poem should look on the page that would not have been obvious to somebody who's not immersed in that world.
Sure, of course. And now you and I had a conversation quite a while ago, actually, about how you were going to market the book. So tell us a little bit about what that looked like. How much did the publisher get involved in marketing, and sort of how did you approach that strategy?
The publisher did not get very involved with that. At the end of the spring semester, I received a packet that the marketing class had created suggesting places where I might want to give speeches, where I could do presentations, organizations to contact about my book. Now, my book came out February 1st, and I didn't receive that publicity packet until May. So I had already been out there doing a lot on my own. I had been doing book readings already and beating the bushes for speaker presentations. So they gave me a few ideas I hadn't thought of along the way, but I did feel like they dropped the ball on that one.
And once you did receive that packet, did you find anything in it that was helpful for you to continue marketing?
Yes, I did. There were suggestions of a couple of places that might be interested in the book that I had not thought of, contests that I was unaware of that I might be able to submit my chapbook to. So that was useful information that's still very current, and I'm still actively looking for opportunities to promote the book. I have 2 coming up this fall, but with a topic like English as a second language and immigration, I don't see any reason why this book needs to have a shelf life. Absolutely.
And, of course, I'm always talking to authors who, many of whom have chosen to self-publish or who are thinking about self-publishing. And, I always tell them it's one of the major differences between publishing with a very large publishing house and working with a smaller house, or going the independent route, is that these big houses are dealing with such high volume and such large budgets that it's sort of like they do a lot before the book comes out, and then they support the book for maybe, let's say, as many as the first 3 months of the book's life. And if it doesn't really take off or nothing really happens, they just kind of forget about it because they have to move on to the next catalog. They have another list of titles coming in. But when you're working with a smaller house or you're doing something on your own, or actually even if you are an author who's with a larger house, really a lot falls on you, not just initially, but for the long term. It's really kind of a long tail game marketing a book. You can't just push really hard the first couple months and then forget about it and figure it's going to sail on through.
And I do the most outrageous things looking for the long shot that will pay off. I was in New York City for a reading unrelated to my book, although I did read from the book, and I thought, well, as long as I'm here, I'm going to go to the UN. I almost got in. I came darn close because I thought, I could get this into their gift shop. I'm still trying to get my telephone calls answered there.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I mean, why not? Gift shops make sense for a poetry book. That certainly sounds like the right kind of gift shop to be in. So maybe you can point their attention to something that I wanted to mention, something that really caught my attention about your book, of course, is you have these fantastic endorsements and testimonials, one of which really stood out to me. This is a testimonial or a cover endorsement from Newt Gingrich. I just want to read this. He said, "You will never think the same about immigrant workers and their children after you read these poems. A remarkable achievement in just a few words." Now, how on earth, there has to be a story there. How did that come about? How did Gingrich, of all people?
Yeah, I've actually known Newt Gingrich 15, 18 years because I used to sing in the choir of the Basilica of the National Shrine in Washington, where his wife is also a member of the choir. And so they hosted our Christmas parties every year. We toured Rome together 2 times. And when I put this book together, and he's on speaking terms with me. He knows who I am, but I wouldn't say like we're intimate friends. And when I put the book together and I got the contract and I was so excited, and then I started panicking, how am I going to get endorsements that mean anything? And my husband was the smart one there, and he said, actually, you know somebody who is eminently qualified to comment on the topic of immigration. Why don't you ask Newt Gingrich? My first response was, oh my God, I couldn't do that. And then I thought about it and I said, of course you can do that. He's used to people asking him to do that. So I did, and he was very accommodating.
Wonderful. And who else did you send the book out to? I mean, was getting endorsements sort of a key part of producing the book for you?
Yes, I sent it to Sue Ellen Thompson, who is a very accomplished Eastern Shore poet, whom I have taken classes with, several classes through the Bethesda Writers Center. And I also solicited the Peter Murphy Writing Seminars, another place that I've done a lot of work. And Peter Murphy put me in touch with Anna M. Evans, who is a formalist poet, and said that she might be somebody who would be interested in this work. And she reviewed it, and I really like her work. So that was a big positive for me as well. And one of my neighbors, who is a novelist actually, but very interested in international affairs, and she begged me, oh, please, I'd love to write about your book. So I said, yes, please do.
Yeah, no publicity is bad publicity, right?
Yeah, that's...
Have you, besides this memoir project that you're working on, have you thought about using any of this material for fiction? One of our listeners was just chiming in the chat box that, that it would be really fascinating. It would be a great tool for fiction. You've got all this incredible detail about a character already there for you.